I'm a big fan of Veracrypt.
I don't
So
know that. Wait, AirCrypt?
Veracrypt,
Oh, VeraCrypt. Okay. I still
it's
don't. I
the
know of it, but I don't use it, so I maybe should.
it's for the paranoid. Some people say, you've probably heard of TrueCrypt, which had been
Yeah.
broken into.
Right.
Veracrypt fixed all that stuff. But by doing that, using doing a mounted virtual drive, you can have a container, as I talk about in the book, which the
Right.
box, no one knows if there's one file in there or
Right.
50,000 files. It's always the same size. You put it in there, it's encrypted, can use
Okay.
multiple encryption schemes, but at least AES 256, of
Oh,
course.
yeah. Okay.
And then from there, have it backed up, but don't back it up in the United States.
Oh,
Back it up someplace in a jurisdiction that has really strong privacy laws. I keep
like
my
somewhere in
data in,
Europe. Somewhere in
mine's in
Europe.
Ireland.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
You can put it in Switzerland. You have to keep up with what's going on over there. But
Right.
if you have things here, people can go see your data.
Hello, and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm your host, Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety. Hello, and welcome to the Smarter Online Safety Show. I'm Jocelyn King, the Queen of Online Safety, and your host. And I am delighted with this episode that I get to introduce Tim Beard. Tim brings over 30 years of experience in public and private sector security. He's a former CIA officer who managed sensitive global missions across Asia and the Middle East. He also served as a U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer, attaining the rank of captain. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And after retiring from the CIA, he founded a global intelligence and risk consulting firm where he was helping clients navigate complex environments and gain competitive advantages through informed decision making. He's also the author of the brand new book and books, because it's a trilogy of three, called Look Twice, offering insights and into intelligence, risk, and strategic thinking. Thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it's so great. So we've got a number of questions for you. Some of them are what we get from our viewers, and but I always like to start with the one question. All of us in security have a story of what got us here, and what transpired in your life or caught your attention that got you into the field of security.
Well, when I was in eighth grade, my
Mm.
dad sat me down and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I would like to be an officer in the military." And I was looking at the Marine Corps, and he said, "It begins now." And so I did all sorts of stuff, and I got a 4-year Marine Option ROTC scholarship. And I went to Georgia Tech for a couple of years. Then I was at Auburn for a couple of years, graduated from Auburn, went in the Marines, spent almost 9 years in the Marine Corps. And then I had a conversation, and I came into the agency, left the Marine Corps, and went into CIA, and retired from CIA a few years ago. And then from there, naturally went into the private sector and have done things since. But it came on my heart to write these 3 books. And I wanted to write a book series that just spoke normal language for what I term just mom and pop America, regular, everyday people who just want to go home and have dinner with their loved ones and be safe. And so I
Wonderful.
took the lessons that I've learned over my career, all over the place, all the places I've been, and I tried to capture those in just simple, standard, regular, everyday language and say, you can do this because your audience, you can do this. It's not hard. It's about doing the fundamentals, the basics right every time.
I love that. That's so great. So let's talk about that. What's a real world lesson from your intelligence career that you think every person listening should apply in their daily life?
Be in the moment. It's about
Mm.
awareness. It's
Okay.
about planning and preparation. A lot of folks are like, well, this happened to me. Something happened to you because of 10 little things
Mm.
that you weren't paying attention to or that you did wrong.
Mm.
And it's rare that you're going to have one thing is going to be a catastrophe. That can happen, but it doesn't happen every day. But you have all these little things that add up, and then you have a huge problem on your hands.
So
So
those are
by
the things that people will often see in hindsight, or for instance, like probably the same with you, 99% of the people I talk to who have survived cybercrime say, I there was a red flag moment, or there was this, or there was that. Is that what you see as well?
it is, they'll say, oh, I should have known. I clicked on that. Why did I
Mm.
do that?
Yeah.
I don't know why you did that, but this is where you have to have your guard up all the time. And it comes also to the preparations. How do you handle your data? Where do you store your data? It's your data. It's worth money. It's certainly worth a lot more than just money to you.
Right.
So you got to treat it with the value it has and protect it.
And let's talk about that because when we're in security, we talk about, data breaches, data protection, data this, and it's, while everybody understands what data is, I don't think the average, civilian or mom and pop thinks of data. So let's talk about, they're thinking of photos or passwords. Let's talk about that. What is data that, I mean, how should they think about their information that we would call data?
Well, you have, of course, PII, personal identifiable information. That's
Mhm.
more critical data. But data is how many folks in your audience will go out and answer a survey and give all sorts of personal information? That's
Oh,
worth money.
yeah.
So you're just giving it away? I don't tend to answer surveys because those surveys, once I answer that and it goes somewhere, where's it go? I've lost track of that. Somebody's
Right.
keeping track of that.
And
And
and there
so,
may be people who aren't even answering what we think of as a formal survey. It's even those little gamification one question quote
right,
surveys on that we see on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and
right.
even on LinkedIn that are about what's your favorite color, what's your favorite car, all those types of things, And so people may be thinking, well, what's the harm in that? Let's talk about that. What is the harm in that?
The harm in that, it's maybe not that individual question,
Mm,
but over time, all those little questions can add up. It depends on how they're being tracked. It depends on who's collecting that information. Things change in technology substantially over time. Quick little anecdote on this.
mhm.
Before I went to Georgia Tech, this is the 1985-86 timeframe, so I'm dating myself on this. I bought a PC 6300 from AT&T back in the day. And I remember the gentleman I purchased it from, he looked at me and he said, the hard drive on this, it's a canyon. It's 20 megabyte. You will never, ever fill it.
Oh,
That's
that's
what,
good.
3 pictures now?
Yeah, right.
And that's the problem. People get stuck in what's true now.
Hmm.
Look where we were 25 years ago. Look where we'll be in 5 years. Look at
Right.
what AI is doing. Look at what we can't even fathom what's going to be happening in 20 years. So
Hmm.
when you're putting this data out and somebody someplace is recording, especially with AI, how's that going to be pieced together?
Hmm.
How are you going to look in that data as it ages over time? It's all
Hmm.
collected somehow, some way, and that's going to continue and it's going to grow.
And it can ultimately be aggregated, even if it's coming from
Right.
different sources. So it can create a complete
Mhm.
overview, a complete dossier on you and your life, and that you don't want. Let's put it that way. And if we have that much information and we're going to share it with somebody, we want to be in control and have the agency
Right.
over who we share it with, right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's great. Now you talked about uh, preparation, and the word that you used, was like being. You didn't say vigilant, but that's kind of the word that came to mind.
Mhm.
Most people will admire you for your CIA work and your intelligence work,
Mhm.
but recognize, oh, but I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So because you emphasize preparation over fear, and
Mhm.
I couldn't agree more. So how do you advise people to strike a balance uh, around that without feeling anxious or overly vigilant or having them feel like they themselves are an intelligence agent?
I use the term possible versus probable.
Okay.
You have to look at what the possible threats are,
Hmm.
but a meteor could follow me right now. I'm not going to prepare for that because otherwise I'm going to be constantly reacting. It's possible, but it's not probable. What
Great.
are the probable threats? That's what you have to address. And that
Hmm.
comes down to each individual. What's their public profile? A lot of folks who are listening right now probably don't have a public profile. And that's great, living below the radar. But
Hmm.
some folks do. So I think of it like an aperture. If you are a person who's a famous person, say somebody from Hollywood or somebody who's a titan of business, then you may have to live your life a little bit more locked down, especially from a security perspective, because there are people who want to target you. If you have a lower profile and you maintain that, intentionally, then you don't have as many things to worry about. So it's selecting the things that are necessary of the range of options that fit what you're comfortable with and that address needs that are probable, not just possible. Sure,
That's
somebody
great.
could do an attack from Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Somebody could come out of no place where you've never seen them before and they could do an attack on you.
Right.
Is that probable? It might be for some people, but not for most.
Right. Well, it's like people who fly all the time. I mean, it's
Mhm.
possible that their plane could go down, but if they spent all their time thinking about that, they'd be so crippled and staying in their house that they
Right.
would not even live their lives. So that's an
Yep.
excellent point. Excellent, excellent point. Um, how do you see, you know, technology playing into all of this, right, and impacting our personal security?
Technology, because the problem, we can't really predict where technology is going to go.
That's
We
true.
may have
In
some themes,
2021, well, in 2019, we weren't expecting COVID just from a
right?
world perspective. And in 2022, early people were not expecting ChatGPT and AI to change the world.
It's as I said before, it's in 1939, how many people were expecting World War II, and it changed the world by 1945.
Yeah.
That same stuff applies to us today, and it applies with technology, and
Hmm.
it moves very, very fast. And things that haven't even been thought about will become routine and normal in just a few years. AI will probably speed up some of the development of that. The folks are using social media, they're using technology to communicate around the world and to bring in these brilliant ideas from all over and synthesize those together. And
Yeah.
so I think the pace, the speed of development is going to increase. Certainly, as my grandmother said many years ago, we're just living too fast. That
Mm.
was her perspective, and
Right.
she died many, many years ago, but it
Right.
was her perspective. I can only imagine what
Right.
she would think about how things are today. And
Hmm.
then for us, what are we going to think 10 years from now?
Right.
Some people thought the mobile devices in the early 2000s had reached their peak. They were
Yes.
wrong.
Oh, especially when they were a clamshell instead of a
Of
giant
course.
field phone and stuff.
Mhm.
You bring that up. I remember my grandmother telling me how overwhelming it was that within 1 year, she saw her first, they went from an ice box to a refrigerator, and she saw her first plane fly. And that was an overwhelming amount of technology changes to see for people of that generation. And it just strikes me with the rate of and the pace of change that happens gets faster and faster. And that's why, I mean, that's why people who are over 60 are feel more overwhelmed in general about all the having to keep up with the changes. They just get their smartphone down and then it changes again and it changes again. And so that rate of change is kind of exponentially growing on all of us, isn't it?
The cough. But yes, the quick glass of water. I know to
Yeah,
cut this out.
please. Please. Yeah, we'll take a quick break and we'll just edit this out. It's no problem. I'll do the same thing. Hold on. There we go. All right.
So yeah, but the
Mm-hmm.
rate of change is a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the Internet of Things,
Mm-hmm.
IoT.
Yep.
People have their data flying all over the place, going all these places no one would have even thought about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Through your washing machine, through your
Yes.
refrigerator,
Your smart TV. Your
smart TV. People put a sensor, a device in their home that is basically listening to them, and I'll use the word spying on them.
yeah.
You
Talk
know,
about that, especially with your intelligence background. I was just I was just a keynote speaker at a conference and just 2 days ago, and I just flew back yesterday, and the conversations that we were having for for the last 48 hours has been around people saying, they're talking and all of a sudden everything's popping up on their phone. And I have had guests on in the industry who do talk about how phones can eavesdrop. They're not allowed to eavesdrop on your conversations, but re- they can record words at some level of frequency.
mhm.
And obviously you can take those and put them into any kind of a syntax, you know, uh, generator or any AI device, and they could come up with the entire gist of your conversation. and serve ads up to you and stuff. I would just love your perspective with your intelligence background on that spying on you issue, and what you're seeing and what consumers should be doing and not doing as a result of that.
Here's my perspective on phones.
Mhm.
If you want to have a private conversation, think of a phone as a friend. So if you're going to have a private conversation, say with your partner,
Mhm.
and you don't want somebody else to know about it, don't invite your friend, your phone, into the room.
Mhm.
Put your friend in the other room, just like you would if it was a roommate who was living with you. Don't
Mhm.
invite it in.
Yeah.
And so just that's one thing. Faraday bags, which can be your friend,
We have
prevent
not covered
signal.
those on this show yet, so that would be great. A
Okay,
lot of the majority of people listening have no idea what a Faraday bag is, and you and I use them all the time. So please
sure.
tell them
Faraday
what that
bag
is.
is something widely available, something that anyone in the audience can get. You can get them online. So you can get one, you put your phone in it and you seal it up. So a bag that has basically metal in it, and
Mhm.
it prevents any signal from getting to the device.
Mhm.
If you want to be really sure, put your phone or your mobile device in a small bag and then put it in a larger bag, like one that's sized for a tablet.
Mhm.
And then I can pretty much guarantee no signal is going to get through. You can call your device to test it. And if nothing registers, well, then it's working. So
Mhm.
you can have the device with you, but then it's sealed away and it's not recording anything. It's not causing you any problems. It's not listening to you. But
Mhm.
people have these very sensitive conversations and they want their phone right there. There's
Yes,
a time and a place where you just want to put it in a room down the hall and leave it
that's true.
away.
Well, in fact, I tell people when you're coming up with your passphrase, in case you're subjected to an AI deepfake later, do not do that in a room with anything that could listen to you. Do it in a room with nothing in it. To your point, do not bring your phone into that room because
Mhm.
you don't know, you have no guarantee that it can't get out.
And convenience is being sold over security. So I
Yes.
don't have a device listening in my home. I've
Hmm.
been over, my friends' homes and they'll be like, they'll just call something out and something will happen. I choose not to do that.
Hmm.
I don't want something in the room that's taking and listening to me or moving data someplace.
Hmm.
I choose not to have the convenience. I
Yeah.
didn't have it for a long time and I'll choose not to have it at this point.
Right.
I'll go that extra step.
Well, and you have it when you choose to have it, which is giving you more choice. Because a lot of people feel overrun by technology. And so I love what you're saying because it reminds people you do have agency over being able to, contain your devices and create privacy again in your home. Because you bring up a good point. Besides being in the same room having a conversation without a phone in there, a lot of people will have conversations on their phones with each other that they don't want anybody to know about. But yet, we almost have to think of our phones as the old what were the phones back in the 50s where you had a call, like, you had a party line,
Right. And somebody
and
could be
anybody
listening
could be
in.
listening in. You have to think, we're kind of back to that. It's like there was only a certain amount of time when it was, cable to cable, that you actually had privacy. And we have to assume that we're kind of back to a party line in a sense when you're talking on a phone, that others can be eavesdropping.
And you can use a commercial messaging application, something like Signal,
Yeah.
especially that has open source, so people can go ahead and look to make sure that everything's fine there, that there are no privacy concerns.
Hmm.
But the encryption that produces, that can be very useful for having a private conversation. But both people have to be on Signal. It may be less convenient.
So let's
And it
talk about
comes,
that
yeah,
because some people only have heard about Signal and Telegram and everything else through headlines that were upsetting or distressing. Let's just explain to people what Signal is and why they might consider it.
sure. It's just an application that's free that you can download to a mobile device, and then
Hmm.
you can talk across it. You can send texts, and those texts are encrypted between the individuals who are, you have to accept somebody. So
Hmm.
you generally, if you're paying attention, we've seen in the news where they've had some challenges with that. But
Yep.
if you're paying attention, or if you have a small texting group and you know who's on that, you
Hmm.
can send texts back and forth that are encrypted, which is going to be, you're going to have privacy in that channel. You can also do video calls or you can do just voice calls. So
Hmm.
it does give you an element of privacy that may be lacking other ways. Using something like that, I make pretty much all my calls on Signal. I don't like to not use
Hmm.
that. Um, I mentioned in the books about perhaps choosing one that's popular in the area where you live. Some people like
Hmm.
Telegram, some
Yeah.
people like Viber, some people like Signal. It just depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
But those are pretty robust. You can
That's
do
a good
some.
point because I travel all over and I have a base in Silicon Valley, but also
Mhm.
in Nevada and then, on the East Coast. And there are very much hubs, if you will, of what's preferred in different parts of the
Right.
country and the world for that matter.
And trying to convince some of my friends to get Signal, I was like,
Right.
hey, it's really easy. I'll help you. I'll help you download it. And they're like, okay, sure. And they download it. And then I send them a Signal message and they never respond. I'm like, hey, I sent you a message. And
They
they're
didn't
like,
see it.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't really pay attention to that.
Okay. Right.
Some people just don't want to use the stuff.
Right. So,
Again,
but if you
convenience.
are somebody who cares about that, and particularly maybe you just use it within your family, you can certainly use it within your small business. If you're a business
Mhm.
owner, you can use it among a friends group. If you want privacy, you can do that. And I just have to say to everybody watching and listening that, if Signal's good enough for a retired Marine and CIA director, it's good enough for you, and you should consider it. So that goes right to
Something I rely on because you can also call around the world. If I'm
right,
overseas and I want to call back home, it works through Wi-Fi.
right.
Very confident I can get through there. I can use cell signal if I have that, but it's going to give me a channel that I'm able to talk through.
Right. And it's secure. So let's bring that up because a lot of people say, oh, I don't need Signal. I use WhatsApp. What would you say to them?
Different choices.
Mhm.
I would do some searching around online before you choose to go away from Signal. I think Signal's the best one.
Right.
Signal's
For
had
security.
First, from a security perspective,
Mhm.
there have been other organizations, third parties that have looked at the code on that one, and they have said, "Hey, this is clean." There
Right.
are, if you look online, there are some really nice spreadsheets out there that take all of the main texting applications and compare them. Signal tends to be the one that is victorious in all those competitions. I'm not getting paid by Signal. It's just that's
Right.
something that I prefer to use. I know a
Hmm.
lot of folks that like Signal. There are other ones that are out there and they may work for you. Again, it comes back to what is the threat? That's the question you always want to ask. What is the threat? What are you looking at? Don't be paranoid. I mean, if you want to protect your data because it's your data, you want to secure your data. That's why you use encryption. You're not being tricky or clever. You're just securing your data. It's yours.
Hmm.
So, but what do you have a need to do? I would like to make calls. If my wife is back in Asia and she's, visiting family or doing something because she's from over there,
Hmm.
well, then maybe I want to call her. I can call her securely on Signal and I can look at her on video and we can talk to each other. And I'm confident in that. That
Yeah,
works
very good.
for me. And
Right.
I would say for the audience, do some homework, but Signal may very well work for them as well.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And so many people in security and coming out of intelligence use Signal. And so I would ditto that. And neither you nor I are getting any kind of a kickback or
No.
referral amount for saying that. So it's a respected tool in the security community. And so therefore it's worth some time and attention looking into that. I think that's really
And
great.
for this whole conversation, we're just trying to help people
Right.
lead more secure lives for just regular everyday folks that maybe haven't heard of some of this stuff.
Right. Now, I want to ask you about your book in a moment, but before I do, I have to say, because I've got my book coming out as well, and for both of us, and you're far more, obviously decorated and things like that than I am, but being in security and expunging your name from the internet and only having social media accounts so you could come in and look around and leave
Mhm.
like a meerkat. I used to say it's like a meerkat coming up and looking around on the savannah and going back down. It's a very different lifestyle. And then to suddenly be in spotlight where, here I'm wanting to grow the amount of viewers, which means in these interesting times we live in, having followers and referrals and
Mhm.
likes and all of this. And putting my likeness out, just like you are, in a
Right.
time when cyber criminals just need, a few seconds of our video or voice to create deepfakes of us. In this time, it must have taken a lot for you, or you probably had to overcome something in order to say, I'm going to go public and I'm going to be on all these, TV shows and radio shows and book signings because I want to get the word out. So if you could
Mhm.
talk a little bit about What did you personally have to wrestle with for yourself on that? And then we'll get into talking about the book itself.
Tell you, I'll be very, very open and honest in this. That's been a real challenge for me because the culture that I came from, um, it's not about me. I mean, I'm a messenger. And
Mhm.
from that culture where I was an unknown for the bulk of my adult life, and then saying, hey, I want to write these books because I want to help people. And I'm very
Mhm.
sincere when I say that.
Yeah.
It was a stark change for
Mhm.
me to go out and look at somebody and go, yeah, I'm retired from the CIA, because people oftentimes will double take at me, what? Or he's crazy, or,
Mhm.
well, no, that's what I did. And I have my medallions and all the stuff that I have from that, my awards and things. But it was very hard because
Mhm.
it's something that we're most of the time we live under the radar for the rest of our life.
Right.
You'll see some
It goes
people,
against your training in a sense, right?
it
Right.
does. And it's just also the personality of someone like me who works there. I don't want to really be in the limelight,
Hmm.
but I do want to get the message out on these books because I've gotten some very positive feedback because I know I'm helping people.
That's
And
awesome.
so I thought it was necessary to do that.
That's
Not
great.
everyone may agree with what I'm doing, but I mean, they had to look at the books beforehand before I could
Right.
put them out to make sure
Right.
there was nothing classified.
No, and that's great. And we certainly appreciate it because you're taking a certain amount of just risk and frankly just the the change that you have to get, change you had to wrestle with in order to do this mission, which
Mhm.
is to help mom and pop America, as you said. Now, your the book series is called Look Twice, and you could you explain the Look Twice mindset and talk
Sure.
about how it helps change the way people approach safety?
Yeah, in the first volume, so I have volume one, two, and three. The
Hmm.
first volume came out 27 January of this year, 2026. And about the first 30 pages of that volume, it's called the Look Twice Mindset. And I introduce a bunch of different concepts, pretty basic, but I want to explain what they are. And then I apply those concepts across the remaining 15 or so chapters on all three volumes. So there's things in there like um, possible versus probable we talked about,
Hmm.
moving between hard points,
Hmm.
safe places where you can call for help, where you're separated from what I term an adversary,
Hmm.
physically separated. I'll use an example, maybe in a grocery store, you tuck into a coffee shop if somebody's following you. You go to the
Hmm.
local police precinct, you duck into a hospital. Somebody can help you there. It's less likely an adversary may or criminal may follow you inside to do something that's bad to you. So moving between hard points, getting off the X. If something bad happens, a prepared spot where a criminal wants to do something to you, we'll call that the X, the ambush site.
Hmm.
What do you do there? You got to get off the X. How do you identify that in advance? I cover through all these different things in the Look Twice mindset
Yeah.
about planning and preparation to
Hmm.
help folks understand. And then we'll talk about your home, your workplace. What do you do in cars? What do you do at the subway? What do you do when you go to the bank? Getting
Hmm.
gas? What do you do when you're out in town? That stuff's all in volume one.
Yeah. That is so important because, my personal story, which I've shared on here, involved both physical security and online security.
Mhm.
And so many of the people that I've spoken to since starting Smarter Online Safety who've come to the workshops or who have written in from, as viewers of this show, there are people who are going through divorces or lawsuits where they
Mhm.
are in physical danger because they're being threatened. And they're not a CIA operative, so they don't know how to protect themselves physically. And so for all those people who are not only worried about, having their social security number on the dark
Mhm.
web and being used against them or having a credit card stolen, there's that threat of a physical safety as well, and even more so for women and than for men. And so this is very powerful to be able to empower your readers with what to do in those situations, particularly in certain places that are more dangerous than others, or they travel for a living. As a woman executive, I used to travel the world, for my company, and it's different being a woman traveling solo than being a man
Mhm.
in all parts of the world. And you definitely have to look twice, if not three times, and know how to protect yourself. So this is so valuable what you're putting out. I'm so grateful to you for doing this for everybody.
And look twice comes from a lot of times when somebody they see something,
Mm-hmm.
they look away and then look back again. Now you may register it in your brain. There's a lot of times it was like, hey, did you just see that guy run by with the red sweater? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
I saw you. You were heading, your eyes were facing that way.
Right.
I didn't even see them because they weren't paying attention. And there's times where you need to see what's going on, look away and look back again to
It
make
kind of
sure your
resets.
mind's
It resets your
registering.
brain.
Absolutely.
I love
Because
that.
you've
Mhm.
got to be able to say, my eyes are not just seeing this or looking at this, they're actually seeing it. I'm absorbing it. It's registering it. That's a really important thing. That
Mhm.
happens to a lot of people who aren't trained observers. They'll
Right.
kind of glance over something. What was over there? You see that billboard back there? Not really. You
Mhm.
got to really pay attention to what's around you. You
Okay.
got to, another term I use in book one is about establishing a baseline.
Mhm.
You want to know what's normal and what's not around your home, your workplace, where you go to school,
Mhm.
house of worship, shopping malls, a strip mall, wherever you spend your time. You want to
Mhm.
know what's normal and what's not. How do people dress? How do they interact? Who tends to be there? Is it quiet certain times of day? Are you going to see 15 young men, bustling around over there who are bored looking for trouble? Is that normal when you go to the mall, or is that
Mhm.
unusual, or is that just Saturday? And you
Right.
want to avoid problems. And so if you see something that starts to deviate from the baseline and
Right.
things start going the wrong way, it's time to leave now, or at least investigate further and then maybe
Yeah.
leave.
That's a great point because most most people were not trained for pattern recognition, really. And frankly, I love what you say because I got good at doing this, and ironically, I got good at those cartoons where you see two frames
Mm-hmm.
and you have to pick out the five things that are different in each
Yep.
one.
Good
I
training.
used to do those with my like every week, and that really helped distinguish things. And that's why I became good at editing document. I'm the person who can see typos at a glance and stuff, not just because I'm good at English, but because I'm like, this is an anomaly, right?
Mhm.
And I think as an operative, you're trained in spotting anomalies, correct?
I would say that's true,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I look at my life, um, where I live in Metro Miami. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things that are true here. It
Mm-hmm.
tends to be warm. So if I see somebody who is wearing a thick hooded sweatshirt and it's 95 degrees outside and they're in a place where that is
Mm-hmm.
not normal, one, they're
Mm-hmm.
probably not from here. Two, they're probably going to become a heat casualty pretty quickly. So I need to call medical now. But people don't do that here. I
Well,
mean, maybe in the depths of the winter.
especially people that might be carrying things or stuff like that,
Right.
right? You become good at recognizing why do they have that big bulky thing for going,
Am
it's
I
something
looking for a
unusual.
weapon? Is there
Mm-hmm.
a weapon that's printing,
Mm-hmm.
which is where it's showing, even though it's concealed, I can see it through the fabric
Mm-hmm.
because they're trying to conceal a weapon, whether a handgun or a knife or something else.
Right.
And so that's a clue. That's something you
Right.
want to watch.
And this is something that, the unfortunate news of things that come up with um, shootings in places and stuff, and people, and it is tragic. And the times that things have been prevented is when somebody noticed something with enough time to do something about it. And so, like you said, it's not about being paranoid, but it's being aware
Mhm.
and being aware of something that is odd, like why are they wearing a hoodie in 95 humid degree weather?
Right.
And there might be a legitimate reason for it, but there could very easily be a nefarious reason for it.
The
And so
Brown
you
shooter,
just want to have
great
that.
example.
Hmm.
There were two people who saw him because he was doing, you can use the term casing or reconnaissance ahead of time to where he was going to do his evil deeds.
Hmm.
He kept coming by again and again and again over a lengthy period of time. There was one custodial worker who was there, and he came out. He said, "What are you doing here? Why do you keep coming by?" And the guy went away. The other one was the gentleman who was experiencing homelessness,
Hmm.
who was a former Brown student, and he approached him and basically chased him away
Hmm.
because those people knew what the baseline was, and it
Hmm.
was not somebody who is from a different age group than most students, who
Hmm.
clearly didn't belong there, who
Hmm.
keeps coming by, who doesn't have a reason to be there.
Hmm.
That's deviating from the baseline. Now there's a couple different approaches. You can approach the person and speak to them, and those two gentlemen did. That may not always be advisable because you don't know how they're going to act, but you can tell somebody in a position of authority,
Right.
I think we got something here that It seems odd. It warrants further investigation.
It would also
Please take a
be
look.
good to take a picture and have any kind of so that you can show it rather than just describe
And you
it,
can
right?
do that in a public
Yeah,
place
right. That's great. Thank you for that. Now, another part of what you bring up that is so great in your book is transportation awareness, and that's a
Mhm.
major section in your book. Why is that such a critical aspect of personal safety today? What do you have to tell people about that?
because people tend to spend an awful lot of time in and around forms of transportation. What's the average commute these days? Somewhere between 36 and 40 minutes, something like that. Depends on where you live. Sometimes it's a lot longer. So you're going to spend a lot of time in and around a car or on a bicycle. I cover a lot of these in there. I also cover boats. You're probably not taking a boat to work, but there's a reason I cover it in there.
Well, I've known people who do, and you're in Miami, so all bets are
Could
off.
happen. Could happen. But the other one is like the subway. When
Hmm.
you walk
Oh,
on
yeah.
a subway platform, there's certain things that you want to do. You want to quickly scan the whole crowd. And I use something called red light, green light, basically a traffic light system. So if you see somebody who I use the example of the 80-year-old grandmother on her walker, that's green. She's not a threat. She's not going to generally cause you harm. I see that, I push it aside.
Mm.
Then if I see somebody that is acting a little bit strange or they're kind of pushing somebody around or they're being difficult, maybe that's yellow. And then I see somebody who is perhaps a gang member. Uh, they're 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 really getting it on. They're talking to themselves. They're screaming. They're acting out. They're throwing something. They broke something. A fight's about to break out. That's red.
Yeah.
I see something that's red. Time to go right now. I
Mhm.
guess that day I'm taking an Uber, not taking the subway.
Right.
I'm going to I'm going to get off that X because there's something there that can potentially happen.
Hmm.
So if you quickly scan everything, hey, I'm not worried about this. This I'll pay attention to. That's a problem.
Right.
You may not see any of those.
Right.
When you go in, don't stand near the tracks. Stand with your back to a wall. That way
That's
you
true.
only have to watch 180 degrees.
Right. You don't have somebody coming up behind you and stuff too.
You just
And
ended
right.
that. Yeah,
Right. And by the way, and as you're leaving X, you want to be looking for somebody official to tell you, right? That the signs we see occasionally, if you see something, say something, so that other people who aren't noticing it don't get hurt as well. So you can be a
yeah,
hero by being observant.
absolutely.
Mm.
And think through this stuff in advance. This is a really key point. I'm
Right.
glad to share with your audience. When you have adrenaline surging through your body because something's happening,
Yeah.
your hands shake. That
Mm.
happens to everybody. You lose your fine motor skills. It
Yeah.
becomes difficult to twist knobs and push buttons and things like that. You kind of go caveman or cavewoman back to how we were built back in the day. So you can get the soda straw effect where your vision shrinks down because it's focused on the threat and event and right in front of you, and you
Hmm.
lose your peripheral vision to the sides. So you
Hmm.
may have to actually turn your head. I'm away from my microphone. Turn your head to the left and the right in order to be able to see. That's because the adrenaline. The other thing that degrades is your ability to make good decisions. So if you think about, hey, what happens if I'm on the subway and this happens? There's a fight breaks out. What am I going to do? Think about it before it happens, when you're clear in mind, when
Hmm.
the adrenaline is not surging through your body.
Right.
That way you can kind of write things to that hard drive in your brain because
Hmm.
that's where your mind's going to go when something actually happens. And
That's
if it's
true.
blank, you have a chance of freezing or going into shock. You
Right.
got to
There's that.
write something.
That's so good. There's that old saying that we don't rise to our level of preparation; we fall to our level of. I can't remember it. I don't think that it's
Well, how you trained is
how you
generally
trained.
what you're going to
That's true.
do. And if you're training, it's kind of like football practice
Hmm.
or hockey practice or pick your favorite sport. If
Hmm.
you don't practice well, how are you going to magically play well when it comes time for the game? You
Right.
got to do really good practice over and over and over when you're clear in mind. And then hopefully when you get to the game, you've done enough that you're going to fall back on that and excel.
That is so
This,
great. That's true
this
because
is
what you're
what you
saying
do,
is, especially when our adrenaline is up, on
not
on
making
the
the best
subway stuff.
decisions.
Well, and we're not even making decisions. We're going off of habit. So the way to get your habits ingrained is to do this. So obviously, by going through your books and thinking of these things, and you
Mhm.
ask them the questions, think about what you would do if and stuff. People can get prepared. And what I love about what you're doing is by basically debriefing civilians on how to more think like an operative in a way, or think of an intelligence person who has to, survive and thrive and everything. That you're giving the inside scoop in a way to how to do this so you can be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
And what I love about that, because I'm all about I educate, empower, and equip people to stay safe
Mhm.
online, is that
Right.
that empowerment that you're giving everyone who reads your books, that you're giving them their agency back of how they can conduct themselves and take back control by being prepared for what happens. You can't control what's going to happen out there, but you control your response, and you're giving them an opportunity to not just, you know, fight or flight. You're giving them the opportunity to respond the way they're choosing to respond prior to it happening. And that
That's the
that
good
is
word.
spectacular.
Choosing on where you put yourself on the chessboard of life.
Oh, I love that. That's brilliant.
So
Yeah.
as you're moving through your day,
Hmm.
let's use a quick example here. You've listened to what I have to say here, maybe read the book.
Hmm.
You establish a baseline around your home. You know it's normal. You've lived there for quite a while. You know
Hmm.
where you park your car. You know what you're generally going to see. You walk out in the morning, and there's three guys you've never seen before down the street who are staring at you, and they're paying way too much attention.
Hmm.
You look at your car. Perhaps one of your tires is popped. If two are popped, you either ran over a bed of nails or somebody's wanting to make sure that you're not able to change your tire. Well, as I say in the book, this is why you signed up for AAA or with your insurance. You go
Hmm.
back inside and you call somebody who's going to come change your tire for you.
Hmm.
Those guys are paying attention. If your car is fine, why are they paying so much attention to me? It's causing me concern. I'm just going to go back inside and wait 15 minutes
Hmm.
because I can tell you it's going to be very uncomfortable if they want to do you harm, if they're a potential adversary. It's very uncomfortable for them to sit there where they may have other eyes on them for 15 minutes. If you
Which will feel
switch
like an
your,
eternity.
it does.
Hmm.
And if you switch your schedule up just a little bit,
Hmm.
that can really add a lot of security. You change how you walk to work. If, say, for example, you park and there's a couple different ways you walk in, make sure you're in a place where you can be observed by others, where there's decent street lighting when you're going to come back to your car at night.
Hmm.
Think through these details that I cover in the book, again, when nothing's going on, but know where are there cameras around?
Hmm.
Are there lights? Where is a hard point along your route? So you park in this parking lot. Is there a place that you can run to if you start to find yourself getting in trouble?
Hmm.
Maybe you can't run. Maybe you have bad knees. Maybe you have a cane. You have to
Hmm.
take those things into consideration. What am I going to do? Think through your game plan,
Hmm.
develop it, and work through that so that you know what your plan is and you
That's
can
good.
you can deviate, but at least you have a plan when things are starting.
And I think another thing, that's such great advice. And I think another thing is what you're asking people to do may sound like a big deal, but it doesn't. Frankly, you're not asking people to spend any more time planning on their safety than they plan on their next trip to Disneyland or the beach or the summer vacation. And, we put the time into that so that you have a wonderful experience. And this is about making sure that your life is the best possible life you
Absolutely.
can have. So that is so great. So for people who want to buy your books and learn more about you, follow you, where should they go, Tim?
Pretty simple on this, timbeardauthor.com.
Awesome.
So Tim Beard, Beard,
Mhm.
author.com. On there, you'll see my pictures, it's the right place. There's my bios on there. And then I have a link to my Amazon Author Central page. If you click on the buy book, it takes you there, and all three books are listed. The first two books, volume one and two, are available in paperback, audio, and Kindle
Wonderful.
ebook. The
That's
third book is available for pre-order in ebook, and on 10 March, the other two versions will be there as well.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And for people listening, a couple weeks after actually about the time we have this, all three will be out and they'll be able to get all three of them. And what a great trilogy, and speaking of summer or spring breaks and summer vacations, this is a great thing to read so you can feel empowered and safer. And all of it from somebody who has served proudly. And thank you again for your service in the Marines and
My pleasure.
helping protect our country as a CIA director of operations. That's truly spectacular. Wow. Well, everybody, you've gotten such incredible tips and advice here, and I highly recommend anything from Tim Beard and his generosity to share all of it with us today. And so I encourage you to pick up the book, to take the things you've heard here and implement at least one of them, if not all of them. And this is so helpful. And if this meant something to you to help you stay safe, which I'm sure it did, please think about who could you share this with so that they could stay safer and hear Tim's message as well. And you'll be helping us and our channel reach more people and help more people as well. Thank you for all of that. So I just want to thank you for joining us on the show today. And until next time, stay safe out there.